You know, there was no public participation. We have come out strongly in support of BBI and not punguza mzigo. All of us tutapunguza hiyo mzigo na huenda tukafika Kanaani pamoja.
To Raila, Kalonzo, Wetangula, Duale and company, I have a message for you all. Stop undermining initiatives that are meant to uplift the lives of all Kenyans. This is not a political competition. You need to stop playing politics with the lives of Kenyans.
Well,
of course, some of the views there by leaders. Remember, the Punguza Mzigo initiative got its first nod today from the county of Western. We are also expecting a report by the Building Bridges initiative, which is another baby, quote unquote, of the handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. Given the timing of this conversation, Felix, because you said two biggest questions we should be asking is, what do we need to change in that constitution, and when do we effect these changes? Critics have said that the timing is very suspect, that we might just undertake such an important activity or process, so to speak, because politicians have said so, and there are also selfish interests around it. What are your thoughts?
It's had solid experience with the experimentation phase of this constitution, with the two elections in between them. Let us take the presidency, for example, the executive. If you look at the submissions, I mean, in 2013 and 2017 election, one of the problems, the mischief that the 2010 constitution sought to cure was to democratize the presidency, to do away with the imperial presidency and the authoritarianism that was associated with the pure presidential system that we had then. But the experience of 2013 and 2017 elections and the 9 years that we've had, one can conclude that we have not quite been able to achieve that objective. The presidency, by and large, is still an all-powerful imperial presidency. And if you look at the 2013 election and 2017 election, the presidential election not only resulted in violence and things like that, but also resulted in what is generally perceived as exclusion, whereby a number of, if you look at by county and across the ethnic divide, there is a perception that only two communities have monopolized the presidency since independence. Now, they need to revisit and relook at the executive with a view to creating what I would recommend the Grand Coalition situation, or the Grand Coalition that we had, and a hybrid system, which is a model, the French model, so to speak, will serve by creating the office of the Prime Minister, for example, and the two deputies. Is not about creating positions for individuals. It's about democratizing the presidency, but also expanding and making it more inclusive and more accommodative. There's nothing wrong with that. If you look at the elections, as I pointed out at the beginning, one of the things that the 2010 Constitution sought to achieve was to constitutionalize political rights in Article 38, but also provide elaborate chapters on representation of the people and the elections. Now, if you look at the 2013 and 2017 election, there's very little difference in terms of implementation and in terms of experiences with that election, that we've been able to make our elections qualitative as provided for in Article 38 and Article 81 of the Constitution. Now, look at the dilemma with the bicameral legislature that we have. The Constitution created the Senate and the National Assembly. Now, since 2013, there has been constant friction between the Senate and the National Assembly, one, with respect to which of the two houses is at the upper house, but also where is the demarcation of roles and responsibilities. I'm in the view that, again, comparatively across the world, the Senate is usually the upper house. Now, you cannot have a Senate that is elected by popular mandate and universal suffrage, and then restrict their legislative mandate and make it very limited to matters of impeachment of the president and matters of considering allocation of revenue to the counties. If we have a Senate elected in the manner that we do elect the Senate, then we must amend the Constitution to give the Senate the power, say, for example, the United States Senate, etc. And of course, the division of the public finance chapter 12 of the Constitution. Yeah. Time and again, we see the constant friction. In fact, as we speak, the country is in a stalemate between the national government and the county government with respect to revenue allocation. But also a fundamental issue that the chapter on public finance sought to cure was the question of corruption. Now, the question here is, are we better off now than we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago? I think corruption has skyrocketed more than it has ever been at any time in our history. So these are fundamental issues that can only be effected through a constitutional amendment, and that's one of the reasons why I support.
But Felix, the 2010 Constitution also, wilted down the powers of the presidency, where now we see Parliament hugely oversighting on issues to do with appointive posts, where they, oversight the candidates that have been appointed by the president, and an array of other issues. But the biggest problem with this then is that the executive is still seen to be all-powerful because of the whipping that goes around in Parliament. And I'm talking about both the National Assembly and the Senate. Political parties, especially those that are in power, continue to have the upper hand in the House. How do we cure this?
I mean, that is an accurate assessment. And on this, I actually fault the Parliament, both the National Assembly and the Senate. One of the things that the Constitution of Kenya tried to do by introducing the presidential system was a clear strengthening of the doctrine of the separation of power by creating the three arms of government. Now, in a pure presidential system and in the spirit of our Constitution, the legislature or parliament is an equal and co-arm of government. Is an equal and co-arm of government. But if you look at, and with tremendous respect to my friends in the National Assembly and the Senate, if you look at the way the Parliament has operated from 2013 and 2017, Parliament operates more as an appendage of the executive as opposed to a co and equal arm of government.
Yes.
Here you cannot fault the Constitution. It's the misconception or misunderstanding of the role of Parliament in a presidential system. Now look, we borrowed from the US presidential system. Now, if you look at the United States Congress and the United States Senate, they have time and again, irrespective of who is the occupant of State House or the President of the United States, they have repeatedly asserted themselves as a co and equal arm of government. One of the examples that I like giving is the 1975 impeachment process of President Richard Nixon. It was the Republican-led Congress and the Senate that actually went to Nixon and told Nixon that you must resign. Can you imagine a situation where the Jubilee administration or the Jubilee legislature in the National Assembly goes to the president? Should the president be culpable of any crime or misdemeanor, as is the case in the United States, and ask the president to step down? In other words, if we are to remove President Uhuru Kenyatta from Jubilee, will we have the Jubilee? But that has a lot to do with the strengthening or institutionalization of political parties.
Okay.
We have to have strong parties to have a strong legislature.
All right, I want us to get back to that shortly. And of course, I'd love to hear Lempa's position around matters to do with the BBI that are expected to present their report in October. A quick break here on The Big Story. We'll be back.